Hello and welcome to the Musical Instrument Investigator. Today we're on the website of Brompton's auctioneers based in the UK, and we're going to have a look at their general musical instrument sale. We say general, but it's mainly kind of bowed stringed instruments, although there are a few other things in this auction. But this sale is the general one because it's a kind of lesser value stuff. It's kind of similar to the Terrizio T2 or the Amati Affordable. There's 360 lots in this auction, so quite a lot of things to go through, so we'll have to speed through it a bit. This sale has been going since the 27th of April and it finishes on the 4th of May 2022. It is the 3rd of May today, so as you'll see there's only about 14 hours or so, 14 and a half hours left until this sale begins. As I said before, this sale is happening in the UK, so if you're an international bidder, then check all the terms and conditions, import, export, additional fees, etc. As with all Brompton's auctions, the buyer's premium is 20%, so that is 20% of the final hammer price on top. They also operate the first in, last out policy, which is if you're the first to bid and then you end up winning it, then you get 2% off the final buyer's premium, which can be quite useful if you're kind of buying something that's quite expensive. So without further ado, because we've got so many things to go through, let's just crack on. I've had a look at this auction very briefly, I think, before, and there's definitely some interesting stuff. It's always worth looking through these auctions a couple of times. You know, you always miss stuff the first time around, so it's definitely good to look at least twice, if not 3 times. So yeah, let's just crack on. So we have a German bow, gold mounted violin bow by H.R. Frechner. We won't go into too much detail on the things. 3,000 to 5,000 is the estimate. There's no bids so far. We seem to have we've got no lot 2. Interesting. Speaking of interesting, an interesting violin boat, middle of the 19th century. Estimate is £600 to £1,000 here. No bids on this so far. It's got the open trench frog. A good German silver mounted violin bow by H.R. Frechner. 600 to 1,000 is the estimate. No bids so far. Octagonal stick. A German silver mounted violin bow by Franz Winkler. Estimates 180 to 200, no bids on that so far. And a German nickel mounted and engraved violin bow, 1 to 200 is the estimate, 50 starting, no bids so far. An interesting nickel mounted violin bow, possibly French, 100 to 200 is the estimate, 100 bid. German nickel mounted violin bow by Karl Hofner, 80 to 120 estimate, 60 is the starting bid. An English silver mounted violin bow by James Tubbs, 3 to 5,000 is the estimate. We've got 1 bid of 3,000 so far. Let's see what's going on there. We seem to another missing lot there. A French silver mounted violin bow by Charles Nicolas Bazin, 1,500 to 2,000 is the estimate. We've got 1,500 bid so far. It's got a Raffin certificate there. A German silver mounted violin bow, possibly workshop of Albert Nuremberg, at 800 to 1,200 the estimate. 700 starting bid, no bid so far. French silver mounted violin bow by Charles Nicolas Bazin, 6 to 1,000 is the estimate. We've got 500 would be the starting bid. German silver mounted violin bow by Heinz Dolling, 4 to 600 is the estimate. We've got 400 is the starting bid. German nickel mounted violin bow by Adolf Thoma, current bid is £190 there, estimate 2 to 400. German silver mounted violin bow by Matthias Thoma, 1,500 to 200. We've got 0 bids on that so far. German silver mounted violin bow by Emil Werner. We've got bids of 500 on that so far. French nickel mounted violin bow by Prosper Colas. No bids on that so far. It's got the Raffin certificate. German silver mounted violin bow by Ernst Heinrich Roth. No bids on that one so far. German violin bow by H.R. Frechner after Viome. Got 480. It's bid on that so far. An English 3/4 size mounted silver mounted violin bow by James Tubbs, 1,400 is the current bid on that. French nickel mounted violin bow by Francois Lot, no bids on that so far. German silver mounted violin bow. The pictures are a bit blurry. Is that just the bad internet, or is that just think it's the bad internet. No bids on that so far. French nickel mounted violin bow by Marc Lebert. No bids on that so far. French silver mounted violin bow, workshop of Sylvestre and Mocatel. 5 bids on that, £700 so far. Condition reports are available if you want them. A silver mounted violin bow, probably workshop of Hippolyte Chrétien Sylvestre. 600 is the current bid. German silver mounted violin bow by H.R. Frechner. No bids on that. French silver mounted violin bow, possibly work of Bazar. 1 bid of 750 on that. A French nickel mounted violin bow. No bids so far. German nickel mounted violin bow attributed to H.R. Frechner. 2 bids on that. French 7/8 nickel mounted violin bow by Eugene Cugno-Huri. 1 bid of 900 on that. French nickel mounted violin bow, probably by a member of the Bazar family. No bids so far. French silver mounted violin bow by Louis Bazar. 2 bids on 1100. Contemporary Baroque violin bow by Ken Cameron. No bids on that so far. German silver mounted violin bow. No bids on that. German nickel mounted violin bow. Let's go to the next one. A good nickel mounted violin bow. No bids on that so far. Stamped Primavera. Silver mounted violin bow, probably German. 1 bid on that, 100. German nickel mounted violin bow. No bids. Bundle of 6 various bows. Bundle of 12 violin bows. Bundle of 8 various bows. Bundle of 5 various bows. Bundle of 10 various bows. Bundle of 17 various assorted bows. Bundle of 10 various bows. 20 assorted bows. Interesting. Sold with a leather-bound presentation case. Interesting. 4 bids on that. £300 so far. A bundle of 10 various bows. 8 various bows. Bundle of 4 various bows. Violins. We're on to an interesting violin, circa 1900. Estimates 3 to 5,000. Labelled Leandro Biziak. Length of back 354. Repairs to table, sun post cracking table with patch. Actually kind of interesting enough violin. English violin, circa 1865. 800 to 1200 pounds is the estimate. Stamped T. Burt. Below the button. 357 length of back. Estimates 800 to 1200. Violin, second half of the 19th century, 3 to 500 is the estimate there. Starting bids of 200. Violin, starting bids of 180. It's fairly standard. German violin, circa 1920. Starting bids of 80. Well, there's a bid of 80 on it. Nothing too exciting. Interesting violin, probably by a member of the Hop family, circa 1800. Starting bids of 900. No bids so far. Slightly not too bad. Interesting enough. A violin. 3 bids on that. It's up to £450. Labelled Louis Germain, Luthier, Paris. A good violin, probably French, 10 bids, £650 onto that. A violin, 1 bid of £300 on that. That's kind of interesting. Labelled Anselmus Belosius. Interesting. Sun post cracking table, sun post posting back with patch and worm damage. Interesting. An Italian violin by Angelo Bontempo, Venice 1971. And got 1500 as the starting bid there. 1800 to 2200 is the estimate there. 356 length of back. Violin ascribed to Carlo Carletti. 700 is the starting bid. There's no bids so far. Violin probably German, first half of the 19th century. 260 is the starting bid for that. Unlabelled. Has some charm though. 354 length of back. Soundpost crack in table. An interesting violin, probably German, second half of the 18th century. 1200 is the starting bid. Sold with certificate of De Gamba, Hanover. Represents a good work of Filippo Cordano. Interesting. And it's labelled Jacobus Philippus Cordanus, but Bromptons don't seem to agree with that. A good violin attributed to and probably workshop of Paul Knorr, Mark Nikirkin. No bids on that so far. An Italian violin by Giancarlo Serreri Chiavari, 1984. One bid on that of £700. Length of back 358. An English violin by Charles Tweedale, Western, 1919. 350 is the starting bid. There's no bids on that so far. Further labelled, this violin is covered in the varnish of Antonio Stradivarius of Cremona, rediscovered by me after 32 years of research. The owner of this instrument is most earnestly requested to guard it with the utmost care against scratches and blows. He is also warned on no account whatsoever to allow any other varnish to be applied to it, or any varnish reviver or crude oils to be used upon it. Charles L. Tweedale. Interesting, that's a bit random. Indeed. German violin, School of Klotz-Mitterfeld, circa 1770. 2,600 is the estimate. At no bids so far. Quite a cool looking scroll on that one. Soundpost crack in table. Swedish Violin by Jens Bergholm, Malmo, 2004. 1,000 is the starting bid. German violin by E.H. Schmidt, Mark Nikirkin, first half of the 20th century. 4 bids on that, 650. A violin. One bid on that, 350. An English violin by John Mather Harrogate, 2009. 5 bids so far, got £240 bid on that. An Italian violin by Bruno Donna, Treponti, 1985. 2 bids on that, 1,700. So that's popular. Certificate of the maker there. An interesting violin, 1 bid on that, £500. A violin circa 1910. Starting bids 350. Labelled copy of Joseph Guarnerius. Labelled fabrication Jérôme Thiberville Lamy, Paris. So you've got quite a nice, interesting back to it. Very long though. Repairs to peg box. A 7/8 French violin, probably Miracle, circa 1910. £80 is the starting bid on that. An English violin by William Atkinson, London, 1891. 5 bids on that. Oh, 3,000. That's interesting. Atkinson, Tottenham. Nice, nice stamp to that. An Italian violin, possibly by Nicola Utilli, Emilia Romagna, circa 1910. 0 bids on that so far. 1,200 to 1,800 is the estimate on that. Interesting. And a French violin, probably Paris, circa 1890. 1 bid on that, £700. Nice varnish on the back. 3 violins, a 3/4 size German violin, circa 1900. A French violin workshop of JTL. An English violin of W.V. Whitburn, Birmingham, 1999. £500 is the bid on that. But you just see one instrument, it seems. So that's a bit of a random lot. A violin, probably English, circa 1899. That's fairly curious one. Labelled The Renaissance Violin, L.H. Longson, London, 1899. Curious. I like the end of the pegs there. That's quite cool. 260 is the starting bid. No bids so far. A violin, probably by Giuseppe Bossi, Stradella, 1929. 3 bids on that. 300. It's a bit of a acquired taste there. 363 is the length of the back. An Italian violin by Bruno Donna, Traponti, 2019. 1,600 is the starting bid on that. Sold with certificate of the maker. An interesting violin. Bid starting at 700. No bids so far. A violin circa 1950, starting bids 650. A violin, probably Italian, starting bids £260. Interesting scroll there. Labelled Jacintus Santaguglia, 1824. 2 violins, one probably German, circa 1910. Okay, 130 is the starting bid on that. A German violin, circa 1890, 11 bids on that, and to £200. Violin attributed to and probably by Otello Radicchieri, Modena, 2001. Estimates 3,000 to 4,000 there. No bids on that so far. An English violin workshop of James Longman, London, circa 1770. No bids on that. 700 to start. Soundpost crack in table with a patch. Violin attributed to and probably by Albert Knorr, circa 1925. Starting bids 400. A violin, starting bids 300. Interesting back, it's quite long. 363. A good violin attributed to and probably by Janos Toth, Budapest, circa 1920. 1 bids on that, 1800. A violin, starting bids of 700 and no bids so far. Violin again, 3 bids on that so far. 280 is the current bid. Interesting enough, back on that one. Violin attributed to Justin Amadi Derazi, Mikor, 1880. 1 bid on that, £500. A violin, probably German, circa 1880. No bids on that, but 200 is the starting bid. A violin, probably Italian, circa 1870. 2 bids on that, 2,800 so far. Waiting for the internet to load. Interesting scroll. An English violin by Job Arden, Wilmslow, circa 1900. 1 bid on that, 1,800 so far. Some quite interesting items. An Italian violin by Federico Fiora, Cremona, 2015. 9 bids of that, 2,400. It's going quite well. Sold with certificate of the maker. German violin, circa 1920. 1 bid on that, £500. Look the back, 357. A violin attributed to Oreste Carpi and Solo, 1947. 1 bid of 1,500 on that one so far. Sold with the certificate of Francesco Trevisin, Venice, 2021. A French violin, circa 1920. 2 bids on that. 750 is the bid. Nice back. A violin, 3 bids, £400. A 3/4 size violin, no bids on that so far. 180 is the starting bid. A German violin, circa 1900. 1 bid on that, 180. A violin, 2 bids, £160. This is the current bid. A violin, Tyrol, circa 1750. 1,600 is the starting bid there. Interesting enough violin. A French violin, first half of the 19th century. 3 bids on that, 1,000 is the current bid. A violin, probably German, second half of the 19th century. Starting bid is £150. No bids on that so far. Interesting back there. German violin, circa 1900. Starting bid 180. An interesting violin, second half of the 19th century. No bids so far. 1,800 is the starting bid. A violin attributed to Raphael and Antonio Galliano. 1500 is the current bid. That's quite a cool scroll actually. Interesting. A violin, probably Mittenwald, circa 1780. 2 bids on that. 1400, sorry, is bid. A violin, probably French, circa 1920. 1 bid on that. 350. A German violin, circa 1910. 1 bid on that. 260. German violin, circa 1910. 1 bid. 150. A German violin again. 1 bid. 180 there. Violin attributed to Mario Garda-Mancha, 1977. 2 bids of £3,000 on that so far. Sold with a certificate of their maker. A French violin, circa 1900. A German violin, Mittenwald, second half of the 19th century. No bids on that so far. A 3/4 size German violin. 150 is the starting bid, but no bids so far. A violin attributed to Amedeo Simonazzi, Reggio Emilia, 1968. 8 bids on that. 3,500. Sorry. So current bid. A German violin by Ernest Reinhold, Saxony, circa 1890. 1 bid on that. £500. A German violin, circa 1890. Current bid 300. French violin, Miracle, circa 1920. 9 bids on that. 380. French violin workshop of Paul Blanchard, Lyon, 1883. No bids. 3,500 is the estimate there. Violin, probably French, circa 1890. 700 to start. No bids so far. A French 3/4 size violin. 150 to start. No bids. German violin, circa 1900. Got 350 to start. No bids so far. Fairly interesting looking back. An English violin by James William Briggs, Leeds, 1890. 1800 to start. No bids so far. A violin, Circle of Klotz, Mittenwald, circa 1790. Starting bids at 1,000. A French violin by Jean-Baptiste Collin, Miracle. 700 is the bid on that. French violin, circa 1910. Current bid 750. A violin attributed to and probably by Mario Dauglio, Luzara, 1980. 1800 is the starting bid. Nothing so far. Lot 137, a violin by Evan Devereaux, Rees, New Zealand, 1910, 700 to start. No bids so far. It's quite interesting looking violin. The varnish looks quite cool. What's the length back? 363. That's very long, but interesting looking violin. A French violin by Louis Joly, Mircourt, circa 1890. 3 bids on that of 600. A German violin, circa 1910. No bids on that so far. 600 is the starting bid. Violin attributed to and probably by Dominique Gautier, L'Orsière, circa 1990. 500 is the starting bid. Interesting shape there. Pretty long instrument. A violin, circa 1830. 350 to start. A French Nicomante viola bow, School of Pêche-Mer, 1200 is the current bid. French Nicomante viola bow, Workshop of Marc Lebert, 700, no bids so far. French Nicomante viola bow, 500 to start, no bids. A good silver mounted viola bow there, no bids, 250 to start. A French Nicomante viola bow by Francois Bazin, starting bids 1200, no bids so far. English silver mounted split cane viola bow by Lawrence Cocker, 500 to start, no bids. Nicomante violin bow or viola bow, probably German, 1800 to start. German silver mounted viola bow, 1300 to start, no bids. Swiss silver mounted viola bow, Workshop of Finkel, 350 to start. Swiss Nicomante viola bow, probably by Johannes Finkel, 260 is the current bid. Nicomante viola bow, 180 is to start. German silver mounted violin or viola bow, 80 to start. Contemporary Italian viola by Daniele Ranieri, Rome, 2019. 2000 is the starting bid. There's no bids so far. Sold with the certificate of the maker there. French viola, probably Paris, first half of the 18th century, 1900. No bids as yet. An interesting viola, probably by William Lauher, Redditch, 1899. 900 is the current bid. Interesting scroll there. An English viola by C.D. Greener, Newcastle, 1982. 450 to start. Interesting back there. Interesting neck. Length about 414. Good condition. Good English viola by J.D. Nicholson, Bebington, 2015. 7 bids, 480 is the current bid. A good viola attributed to Giuseppe Pellicani, Modena, 1968. Starting bids at 1900. No bids so far. 424 length of back on the larger size. A viola, probably by Delphi Merlot, Milan, 1991. 2200 to start. No bids so far. German viola, circa 1920. 2 bids so far. A French viola, School of Francois Nicolas Cossart, circa 1870. 1 bid there of 2600. A good German viola by Andreas Schmidt, 1998, a Tertis model. 1000 to start. No bids so far. German viola, probably Mitterwald, circa 1920. 3 bids on that so far, so we're up to 400 bid on that. An English viola by Jan Shelley, Newark, 1982. 3 bids on that. It's 1000 is the current bid. An American viola by John Justus Hull, Pennsylvania, circa 1910, 1200 to start, no bids so far. An English viola by John Wine, Northampton, 1995, 500 to start on that, no bids so far. 386, the length of the back. An English silver-mounted split-cane cello bow by Lawrence Cocker, 900 to start, no bids. An ebony and bone-mounted cello bow attributed to Thomas Tubbs, 2 bids, 750 is the current bid. An interesting silver-mounted cello bow, 500 to start, no bids so far. An English silver-mounted cello bow by Jan Kudenowski, 1800 is the starting bid. Have a quick look at that. Weight 82 grams. 2 to 4,000 is the estimate. German silver-mounted cello bow by Lothar Seifert. Current bid is 320. German silver-mounted cello bow, School of Bausch. Oh, we just missed that there. Current bid 220. German silver-mounted cello bow, Arthur Thoma, 700 to start, no bids. French nickel-mounted cello bow, School of Bazar, 500 to start. Swiss silver-mounted cello bow, workshop of Johannes Finkel, 1 bid of 300 on that. Good German silver-mounted cello bow, starting bids of 450. German nickel-mounted cello bow after John Dodd, 350 to start. French silver-mounted cello bow, possibly workshop of JTL, 1 bid of 800. French silver-mounted cello bow, workshop of Paul Serdet, 700 is starting bid. Nickel-mounted cello bow, 250 to start. Another nickel-mounted cello bow, 260 to start. Good Swiss nickel-mounted cello bow by Rudolf Neudorfer, 1 bid of 300 on that. German silver-mounted cello bow by a member of the Frechner family, 250 to start there. A German nickel-mounted cello bow by Richard Weichold, 3 bids, 170 on that. German mounted nickel-mounted cello bow, workshop of Roderick Paysold, 8 bids on that, 190. German silver-mounted cello bow there, 700 to start. English snakewood Brock bass or bass viol bow by Roger Doe, 4 bids, 550 on that so far. German silver-mounted cello bow by Ernst Willy Zofel, 2 bids on that, 500. An interesting silver-mounted cello bow, possibly French, 260 to start, no bids. A German nickel-mounted French-style double bass bow by Conrad Gott, starting bid 100. A French nickel-mounted cello bow by Marc Lebert, 2 bids, 800. An English silver-mounted double bass bow by J.E. Vickers, starting bids 500, no bids. A German silver-mounted French-style double bass bow, 3 bids, we're up to 600 there. An interesting nickel-mounted French-style double bass bow, possibly French, 200, no bid. An Italian cello by Dario Aguzzi, Vidigolfo, 2016, 2 bids, up to 5,500. Sold with certificate of the maker. Cello probably German, circa 1880, 1 bid of 1,800 so far. A good and interesting cello, current bid £1,200, 3 bids. A German cello, probably Mittenwald, circa 1920, starting bid 900. An interesting cello, probably Italian first quarter of the 20th century, starting bid 4.5. An English cello by J.E. Vickers, Norfolk, circa 1980, starting bid 3.5. No bids so far. A good German cello, Saxony, circa 1890, current bid 3.5. 5 bids on that. A good French cello, Mircore, circa 1880, current bid 2,000, 3 bids on that. A good cello, possibly German, circa 1959, 1 bid of 1,000. A German cello by Karl Bitterer, Mittenwald, second half of the 20th century, 2,000 is the estimate, no bids. Oh, is the starting bid, in fact. A German cello by Matthias Neuner, Mittelwald circa 1880. 16 bids there for 4,800 is the current bid, and it's already over the estimate, so that's interesting. German cello Mittelwald circa 1910, starting bids of 900. A good double bass, probably School of Barb, circa 1860, one bid of 2,800 on that. A German double bass, circa 1910, 1,300 to start, no bids so far. A German classical guitar by Edgar Monk, Munich, 1958, one bid of 3,000 on that. Sold with a letter from Monk from 1959. An Italian classical guitar by Raphael Callas and Son, Naples, 1964, 500 to start. No bids. 600 to 800 is the estimate. That seems potentially a bit optimistic. A good Spanish guitar, circa 1850, one bid of 180 there. A German viol, workshop of Peter Harlan, Kassel, 1932, 350 to start. A mahogany veneered shaped violin case, probably by W. Hill and Sons, one bid, 150. An English oblong violin case by Michael Gorge, two bids at 190. Oblong double violin case, £50 bid. Oblong double violin case, £50 bid. English violin case by M.A. Gorge there, 7 bids, 260 on that. A book, this is Late Cremonese Violin Makers by Dimitri Gindin. It's 3 bids on £70 so far. A flute by Ruddle Cart & Co. Limited, 0 bids on that, 150. A lute, probably English, circa 1970, 350 is the estimate, 0 bids so far. Oh, let's actually have a look at the back of that while we're here. A French silver mounted violin bow by Claude Thomasin, starting bid 2,600, no bids so far. French nickel mounted violin bow, workshop of JTL, starting bid 700. Good silver mounted violin bow, possibly by James Tubbs, starting bid 1900. Nickel mounted violin bow, possibly French, current bid 120, 8 bids. A good nickel mounted violin bow, probably workshop of JTL, one bid of 200 on that. French silver mounted violin bow by Claude Thomasin, 4.5 is the starting bid. A French nickel mounted violin bow, workshop of JTL, 700 is the starting bid. German silver mounted violin bow by Eugene Meinl, 500 is the starting bid. German silver mounted violin bow by Lothar Seifert, current bid of 450 on that. German silver mounted violin bow, 350 is the current bid. Good silver mounted violin bow, possibly French after taught, one bid of 700 on that. German silver mounted violin bow by Emil Max Penzel, 3 bids of 500 on that. English silver mounted violin bow, probably by James Tubbs, 0 bids on that, 260 to start, 3 to 5 is the estimate. An English silver mounted violin bow by W. Hills and Sons, 1,500 to start, 2 to 4 is the estimate. Round stick, the mount's probably later. Actually, what was the other notes there? Good throughout, except the beginning of a pin crack to the back of the head. Okay. Swiss nickel mounted violin bow by Siegfried Finkel, starting bid 500. Silver mounted violin bow, probably French, starting bid 350. French silver mounted violin bow by Charles Nicolas Bazar, 2 bids of 1,400 on that. German silver mounted violin bow by H.R. Frechner, 500 to start. A French silver and tortoiseshell mounted violin bow, probably by Jerome de Voirve, 3 bids of 600 on that. So CITES restrictions on that, so you need to check what you got to do to kind of export that potentially. A German silver mounted violin bow by Gustav Prager, 450 to start, no bids. Selection of 8 various bows in presentation case, no bids on that so far. 250 is the starting bid. Silver mounted violin bow, probably workshop with Sylvester and Macatel, 500 to start, no bids. French nickel mounted violin bow, 400 to start. Nickel mounted violin bow, 350 to start. French nickel mounted viola bow, School of Martin Cugnot, 700 to start. French nickel mounted violin bow, School of Dominique Picat, 700 to start. French nickel mounted violin bow, 500 to start. French silver mounted violin bow, workshop of Roger Max Millant, 2 bids of 850 on that so far. French silver mounted violin bow, 1 bid of 500 on that. French bone mounted violin bow, possibly by Francois Jude Goulard, 0 bids so far, 500 to start there. Interesting open trench frog. Silver mounted violin bow, probably German, 450 to start. An English Baroque violin or gamba bow by Matthew Coltman, 2 bids on that, 480. Matthew Coltman bows are usually pretty nice. I believe he has a shop in, is it Acton, I think, in London? I'm not 100% sure. I think it might be Acton or somewhere around that way. German silver mounted violin bow by August Edwin Prager, 350 to start. Silver mounted violin bow, 450 to start. French silver mounted violin bow made for the workshop of Paul Blanchard, 2 bids, 1000. A French nickel mounted violin bow, School of Bazas, 600 to start. French nickel mounted violin bow by Francois Lotte, 350 to start. German nickel mounted violin bow by Roderick Paisel, 260 to start. Nickel mounted violin bow by Claude Thomasas, 700 to start. German silver mounted violin bow by Albin Hums, 450 to start. German nickel mounted violin bow after Vorat, 3 bids, 300 on that. Good silver mounted violin bow probably by W.E. Dorfler, 260 to start. English silver mounted violin bow by John Clutterbuck, 1 bid of 1000 on that. An English nickel mounted violin bow, W.E. Hills and Sons, 450 to start. Estimates 5 to 800. Stick good, handle with some minor frog good, interesting. Later frog, later button. An English nickel mounted violin bow by Roy Collins, current bid 120, number of bids 4. And a German nickel mounted violin bow, starting bids at 50, estimates 1 to 200. To violins again, a German violin, circa 1780, 800 to start. A violin, probably French, circa 1820, 1200 to start on that. A German violin, circa 1900, 350 to start the bidding on that. A violin, first half of the 19th century, 350 to start on that. A German violin, circa 1890, typical kind of lion's head there, 150 to start with. It's a slightly nicer lion than normal. It's a bit more towards the Steiner type. A German violin, circa 1900, 100 to start. This is pretty junky. Violin attributed to and possibly by Oreste Martini, Mantua, 1955, 2600 is the opening bid. An interesting violin, first half of the 19th century, 1 bid on that, sort of £800. Half-size French violin, workshop of JTL, Amircourt, 1890, current bid 260. A German violin, probably Mittenwald, 1886, 1 bid of 150. A nice kind of bird's eye back on that actually. German violin, circa 1910, starting bids 180. German violin, circa 1880, no bids, 150 to start. A Baroque violin, probably German, second half of the 18th century, 1 bid on that, 1500. An interesting violin, probably first half of the 20th century, starting bid 900. An English violin by Joseph Olwood, London, circa 1790, 700 to start. A violin possibly custom school, circa 1880, one bid of £700 on that. A good and interesting German violin, circa 1870, one bid of £400 on that. Interesting back. German violin made for Rushworth and Draper, Mark Nickerkin, circa 1910. 450 is the starting bid. French violin, workshop of Leon Bernardel, Paris, circa 1920. 350 to start. An American violin by Poland and Fuchs, Brooklyn, 1926. 180 is the starting bid on that. $356 is the length back. Looks like there's a nasty crack there. Yeah, length work 356, repair to ribs and soundpost cracking back. That's unfortunate because it'll actually be quite interesting. French violin, Mircourt, circa 1830, 1800 to start. Interesting back on that. Scottish violin by John Lowe, Glasgow, 1924, 750 to start. Swedish violin by Elias Karlander, Stockholm, 1781, starting bid £500. So that's interesting. Quite an early Swedish violin. So that's an interesting one to observe. Slightly curious shape. Length back 360, repairs to table, back and scroll, bearing the maker's label. That's slightly curious one, that, isn't it? Definitely slightly odd. Still interesting, nevertheless. German violin, circa 1800. One bid of 260 on that so far. German violin, circa 1900. 250 is the starting bid. French violin, school of Gersan, Paris, second half of the 18th century, starting bid of 1800. Quite nice, nice back on that. An English violin by Nigel Melfi, Newark, 2006, 900 to start. An English violin by John Hare, London, circa 1710. Current bid 600, number of bids 3. Labelled as such, 355, length of back, repairs to table, ribs, back, neck, scroll and worm damage. Now this instrument I think is possibly one of the most interesting in this auction, because this is quite an early English violin. This would be kind of, Stradivari would still be alive here. I believe that John Hare was like the student or assistant to one of the very kind of fine English makers, Daniel Parker, that sometimes gets referred to as like the English Stradivari, whose instruments can sell for quite a lot of money. So this I think is an interesting instrument, a really cool scroll, but you can see how bad that worm damage is. That is really quite bad. You can see other remnants of it. This looks a little bit different to the other examples of the work of John Hare that I've seen, but I'm not particularly knowledgeable. But I do know that I guess good examples of these in a dealer might be kind of 15,000, 10 to 15,000. So potentially someone sees some kind of investment in this if it goes cheap enough. But a very interesting violin, and a shame about the amount of woodworm, but definitely probably one of my top lots I think for this auction. A good violin, possibly Hungarian, circa 1870, one bid of £500 on that. Violin, circa 1900, one bid of £350 on that. Unlabelled. An interesting violin, English or Scottish, circa 1800. 200 is to start. No bids on that so far. Kind of inked purfling on that, but really quite an attractive figure on the back of that. A curious one, that 359 length of back. Worm damage in ribs, so that's kind of unfortunate, but an interesting looking violin. German violin, circa 1900, 160 to start. Violin possibly Czech, circa 1930, 160 to start on that. A good German violin, Dresden, 1890. 6 bids on that, 1100. That's interesting. It's quite a strong figure in the back there. Good violin attributed to Paul Knorr, Mark Nicholson, circa 1920. 4 bids on that, 750. So quite a nice back on that. French violin Miracle, circa 1890. 500 to start, no bids so far. Good violin, possibly School of Calsin, circa 1870. 7 bids on that so far, 350. German violin, circa 1900, 180 to start. Pretty typical. Violin by Camillo Mandelli de Calco, Buenos Aires, 1917. 3 bids of that, 8,000. So that's popular. That's the highest kind of amount at the moment. An English violin, probably School of Panormo, London, circa 1800, after Amati. No bids so far. 2.6 is the starting bid. An English violin, London, circa 1780. 600 to start on that. Looks like there's been a bit of worm on that as well, I suspect. Yeah, worm damage. You can kind of see the telltale signs. Violin School of Calsin, circa 1880. 6 bids on that, 90. Love the way that there's 6 bids and it's still only £90. But interesting. French violin by Lebert Humbert Frères, Miracle, 1928. 0 bids, 2.6 is the estimate, or is the starting bid. Sold with the certificate of the maker. That's quite interesting. German violin, circa 1860, 700 to start. No bids so far. German violin, circa 1830, 600 to start. No bids. Good violin, probably German, circa 1925. 500 to start. English violin by Geoffrey J. Gilbert, Peterborough, 1898. 1 bid of 1,500 on that. French violin, probably Paris, circa 1800. 2 bids of 1,400 on that. German half-size violin, probably Mittenwald, circa 1880. 1 bid of 180 on that. English violin, circa 1790, 700 to start. Length back 350. 3/4 size French violin, probably Miracle, circa 1920, 260 to start. Italian violin, first half of the 19th century, 2 bids of 2,800 on that. 3/4/6 length of back, that is quite small. Violin, probably French, first half of the 19th century, 13 bids of that, 320. It's the current bid. Interesting back. Labelled Balistieri. German half-size violin, Mittenwald, circa 1880. 2 bids there, 200. A violin probably by Luigi Ravati, Buenos Aires, circa 1920. 260 is the starting bid for that. A French violin, probably Mirko, circa 1920. Starting bid 500. Violin, probably Mirko, circa 1920. Starting bid 350. Italian violin, workshop of Eugenio Sterzi, Florence, 1957. 2 bids on that, 5,000 is the current bid. Violin, probably by Giuseppe Bernardi, Genoa, 1912. 5 bids on that, 2,600. French violin by Accolon and Blondelet, Paris, circa 1920. 1 bid of 700 on that. A violin, no bids, 450 to start there. French violin, Mirko, circa 1890. Starting bid 500. French violin, circa 1900. 1 bid of 500 on that. And a violin, 2 bids of 550 on that. Labelled Marinis Cappuccioni. Interesting. French violin, Mirko, circa 1900. 1 bid of 800 on that. Violin, probably Mirko, circa 1910. Starting bid is 500. An interesting violin, possibly English, circa 1880. Starting bid 450. French violin, workshop of Marc Lebert, Mirko, circa 1920. 2 bids on that. 1,500 is the current bid. German violin, Circle of Klotz, Mittenwald, circa 1790. 1,200 is the current bid on that. There really are a lot of these kind of Klotz or Klotz school violins around. An English violin by J. Banks, Dudley, 1930. 2 bids of 400 on that. A violin, possibly English, circa 1890. 2 bids of 300. Violin, probably German. Current bid 150. English violin, circa 1800. Starting bid 800. Interesting. German violin by the Wolf Brothers, Krusnak, 1896. 2 bids, 400. A violin after Testore, 1 bid on that, 500. A German violin, first half of the 20th century. 5 bids on that, 260. French violin by Amédée Dudouin, Mirko, 1936. 0 bids on that so far. 1,800 is the estimate. An interesting violin, 0 bids on that. 1,000 is the starting bid. Definitely looks to be in an interesting varnish condition. French violin, circa 1870. 11 bids. 800 is the current bid. German violin, circa 1930. Current bid 380. That's 2 bids. An English violin by Job Arden, Cheshire, circa 1890. 0 bids so far on that. 1800 is the starting. Violin, possibly French, 1 bid on that, 600. German violin, first half of the 20th century, 500 to start, no bids so far. French violin, circa 1880, 22 bids on that, 2,200 is the current bid. Estimate was 5 to 800, so that's doing well. Labelled Sebastian Villaume, length of back 357. An interesting violin, circa 1800, 1 bid, 1800 there. It does look kind of slightly interesting actually. Labelled Joseph Guarnerius, length of back 362. Soundpost crack and table with patch. French violin, second half of the 19th century, 700 to start, no bids so far. Good German violin, circa 1910. Current bid 350. German violin, probably Mittenwald, circa 1920. Starting bid 200. Curious kind of scroll there. And an interesting violin, possibly Italian, circa 1880. 2 bids on that so far. 1,000 is bid. Length of back 357. So that's definitely curious. And I think that is it. Yeah, so there we go. So that took quite a long time because there's a lot of lots. So like I said, 360 odd lots. Some really interesting stuff actually, and even now after having kind of looked through this catalogue twice, I'm still kind of still stuff that I'm like, oh, I should really look at that again in more detail. So definitely lots of interesting stuff. Really like the violin by John Hare, despite the fact that most of it's been eaten by woodworm, but it's definitely really interesting. So I'm going to put a link in the description. Check the auction out. Like I said, it finishes tomorrow, so you still got a bit of time to kind of look at it and potentially bid if you're interested. I definitely think this one's worth looking at because there's some cool stuff. And yeah, thanks a lot for kind of watching the video, and I'll catch you next time. Ciao. Many thanks for tuning in to the Musical Instrument Investigator. I hope that you enjoyed the video. If you did, then please like, subscribe and turn on notifications, and watch out for the next video coming soon.